organize these, but in my day job, I also do professional development work myself in my own business, Diana Rowan Consulting. I do executive coaching and leadership development. And so we had a speaker who had to shift because she's moving, which is an exciting thing, but also if you've ever moved before, very stressful. So she is going to do May, and I decided to step in. And I've got a ton of topics to choose from, but this one's been top of mind for me lately. And it's such a helpful framework that I thought it would be a great topic to start with. So I actually live in Southwest Michigan, but have been, but in this area with my work and in Elkhart and everything in the general regional area. And I worked at Notre Dame for 17 years before I started my own business. So no stranger to the area. Come on in. Just giving a little introduction, and you've heard it probably before. So without further ado, yeah, there we go.
Oh, just don't close it all the way though, because it locks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I looked for a doorstop earlier and I couldn't find one either. Thank you. Yeah, we'll see what she gets. So am I blocking your view? The Four Tendencies is a framework that was invented, discovered, you could use either term, I guess, but by Gretchen Rubin. She is the author of something called The Happiness Project, and she has some other books as well. But she does have a book called The Four Tendencies. So if you're curious about learning more after today, you're certainly welcome to check that out. But this particular framework really discusses one facet of our personalities, and that is how we respond to expectations. So we all face both inner expectations and outer expectations. Outer expectations would be things like work deadlines, timelines, things like that. It would be answering a request that somebody else has of you, whether a colleague or even a partner. It is all of those rules and laws and things that are outside of us that as a society we just have to follow, right? So those are our outer expectations. And then we also have inner expectations. So these are things like, our own personal goals, things that we want to accomplish. New Year's resolutions fall under this category of inner expectations. If you have passion projects or things that you enjoy doing, things that your own goals about achievements you want to make, all of those fall in the realm of our inner expectations. And so how we respond to inner and outer expectations is what establishes our tendency. So if you kind of chart the responses, you can see here we've got, if you meet both inner and outer expectations, that puts you in that upper quadrant of the upholder. That's the upholder tendency. If you meet external or outer expectations, but struggle with inner expectations or resist inner expectations, then that puts you in this other quadrant here with the obliger. Now, on the other hand, if you embrace inner expectations, but resist outer expectations, that puts you up here with the questioner. And if you resist all types of expectations, you don't want to do any of them, that makes you a rebel. Okay. Yes.
So don't look at anybody in the room right now.
Those four tendencies. So we're going to go through each of these, and then you'll have an opportunity to take the quiz and see for yourself what type you are. But as we go along and talk about them, most likely you're going to hear something that you really resonate with. So one thing I want to mention before we even get into these is that every single tendency has positive sides and downsides. So you might hear one and be like, oh, I wish I was that, but I don't think I am. That's okay. The most important thing is understanding your own tendency and how you can work with that tendency to be successful in life. So the first one are the upholders. So upholders are really your self-starters. They are self-motivated because they are, they're good following or easily, readily meeting their own internal expectations. So if you've got a goal, you will work hard to meet that. But on the other hand, they're also readily meeting external expectations. So these are people typically who are really productive. They are very disciplined. They usually don't have trouble adopting a habit. And they really don't have a difficult time getting themselves to do something. So it sounds great, right? Like, wow, this is very nice and shiny. But upholders can also be kind of rigid. They can get stuck in a particular mode or a routine, and they are inflexible. They don't want to vary from that. Like if you want to change plans last minute, they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like this is what we're supposed to be doing. And so that can be a little bit difficult for people sometimes when they're just have a difficult time relaxing and moving away from those things that they want to do. Their motto is discipline is my freedom, because for them, doing the things that they know that they want to do or should do allows them freedom to, like they feel a great sense of freedom in that. Like once I've done everything I need to do, like I feel good about myself. Whereas other people, if they feel like they're stuck doing all of these things and having to answer to, other people and themselves, it might make them feel like, blah. Like I just want to be able to do my own thing. Upholders really love it. They like that about themselves. So that is the upholder type.
I was laughing at that.
Oh, yeah. So the next type are the questioners. So questioners really like logic. They like things to be efficient. And so for them, they really, what they're doing in effect, they uphold their own internal expectations because they're not going to set an expectation if it doesn't make sense to them. But in order to do something that's an outer expectation, it really needs to make sense. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to question anything they have to do. And if they feel like there's a good enough rationale, they will adopt it as an internal expectation or an inner expectation. And so, these are people who, if you get them on board, they'll go along. But you got to get them on board first. Otherwise, like they're going to be kicking and screaming, fighting every step of the way. So they hate arbitrary deadlines. If you just like set a random date on the calendar and say you need to do this by then, like, so why? But if you tie it to a reason, so we've got to get this done by X date, like maybe it's, think about a home repair because we've got somebody coming over, we've got guests coming to stay in the guest room, so we really need that guest bathroom repaired. Like, okay, yeah, got it. I understand the reason, I will get it done. Mm-hmm. No problem. So the questioner, they really need to understand why. Now, the downside is that sometimes they have a difficult time making decisions about things because they're questioning everything. So they might have difficulty committing to something. They can get stuck in analysis paralysis. They can, because they're asking so many questions, that can be frustrating for people. And sometimes, especially people in authority, can feel like they are being challenged. And so that their authority is being challenged, and they may not like that. So they can kind of rub people the wrong way with all of those questions. But their motto is, I'll comply if you convince me why. So that is the questioner. Now the next type is the obliger. So obligers, as I mentioned, they meet outer expectations, but they can struggle to meet inner expectations. So these are people they like to keep the peace and they care about what other people think. And so they want to make sure that they're meeting other people's expectations. So they're really focused on good relationships. And so if you ask me to do something, gosh darn it, I am going to come through for you. Don't you worry. You can depend on me. And the difficult part about this, though, for them is that sometimes while they have no trouble doing something for you, when it comes to themselves and their own self-care or things that they need to do, they have trouble making themselves do it. So, and as a result, they can sometimes get burnt out. They say yes to too many things, and it can tip them into something that's called, or that Gretchen Rubin calls, Obliger rebellion, where they just do for everybody else. And then the next thing you know, hi there, come on in, doing well, thank you. Come on in, have a seat. Yeah, wherever you like. So Obliger Rebellion, where they have said yes so many times that now they're burnout and they're just like the yes becomes a no to everything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just done. And so that's that's a problem too. So they don't like to be pushed to that extreme. But their motto is, you can count on me, and I'm counting on you to count on me. So that is the Obliger type. And then finally, the rebel type. So these are people who resist all expectations, both inner expectations, again, inner, like our own personal goals, things that we want to do, and outer expectations. So deadlines or other things that people ask them to do. They resist all of it. So these happen to be people who really, they care about being authentic. They care about doing things that are in line with their own identity. They can do anything they want to do or anything they choose to do. But the second there's some kind of formal expectation in place, it kind of triggers their resistance. Like, I don't want to do that. So that can be a challenge. So obviously the downside of that is if somebody, if in life, there's a lot of expectations, there's rules, there's all kinds of things that we have to do. The rebel, they don't want to do it. They want to do things in their own time and in their own way. And so that leads them to be sometimes viewed as uncooperative because they don't want to do things just because everybody else is doing things. And their motto is, you can't make me, and neither can I. So, you can see that they that can be where that can be a challenge. But again, they love freedom, they love choice, and if they choose to do something, they can do that. So their rebels are not like monsters, okay? They are just people that have this particular tendency, and if they choose to be a caring, loving parent or a caring, loving spouse, they might choose to do things for that person just out of that because they care about that identity, and so that identity really matters to them. And so they can do a lot of things, but the second they feel like somebody is nagging them or getting on them, it kind of triggers that resistance. So we got to be careful not to trigger that. So you get the opportunity to identify your own tendency. So if you don't have a phone with you, I do have a few paper versions. Raise your hand if you would prefer a paper version of the quiz. Okay. You gonna scan? Okay. Slide that to you. Do you have a pen? Okay, that's what I do. That's my tendency. So go ahead and take this quiz. I'll give you a few minutes to do it. If you get stuck or have a question, just raise your hand.
This is hard. It makes you look at yourself in the mirror.
I know what I am.
And so do I. These questions are.
Oh, you've been on.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you here?
I don't do anything here, right?
I'll help you with that. That's what that is. Storage.
Oh, forget it.
Oh, my God.
Well, then I'll just get it.
So that's what you're.
And then see if it's you.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Taking that one and then how we talk about how we have the mustache.
Okay.
Good.
Question here. And Upholder.
Yeah, and yeah. We'll ask you for an email address and then it'll show you, but you'll also get a report. Or it's just a couple pager, but it gives you a little bit more.
The results will come to the email.
It should, once you put your email address in, it should show you your result on that page as well. But,
Yeah, it should show it.
um, did you put in your email address?
Yeah, but so,
Oh, that's it. No, you have it. You got it. Did you get to this question? Try it again. Because it should
oh, I'm
automatically.
sorry, I missed that.
Yeah. There you go. That's where. Yeah.
Who can I guess? Like, yes.
So what please do?
It's not, it's not you agree.
If it's not tender degree or neutral, don't put a dash in
Upholder.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Your question.
Yeah. So if it is tend to agree, then you
I
can
think
just
I'm- I think I'm doing this. Oh,
that. If it is, but if it's not, it's
Okay. I'm surprised he's a question.
yeah, I'm gonna do some of the questions, but
Oh, he does ask long.
I had a question for my. I think I'm neutral when it comes to, like, I ask enough questions, not to overly, because I ask enough so I can make an informed decision.
That's the definition of a question.
Yeah, but not to annoy. Yeah, I
Yeah.
recognize the.
So I would say, here's the right now. If I,
You bet.
is it Elliot?
Yes.
If I ask Elliot to do something and he has some questions about it, that's normal. A lot of people will have.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to be a questioner. Now, if my answer determines whether or not he's going to do it, he is a questioner. If he's going to do it regardless, he just wants some more information, then that doesn't make it.
No, like when, where, why, and how.
Yeah. So, yeah, I need you to get this report to me by Friday,
Yeah.
and you say, okay, what does that look like? You know, like what is, you know, what different pieces you want included in that? And then I tell him, and he says, okay. If he says, well, by Friday.
Mm-hmm. How long you talk about this, Gail?
Like,
Why are you
like,
asking at the last minute?
maybe I will get it to you Friday. Maybe I will. What, I mean, are you gonna actually look at this over the weekend? If not, can I just get it to you Monday? That would be a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't go that far.
Yeah.
But I would question up to the. I guess it's the two weekend. I thought I would fall into the. What do you thought it was gonna be again?
The upholder.
Yeah.
I wish it was upholder.
Yeah, I thought it would fall in. Oh, yeah.
I thought I was gonna be a questioner, but I'm not.
I thought it would be a question.
I'm disappointed in myself.
So we got a couple doing the paper that had to actually score theirs. So I'm gonna let them keep going, but I'm gonna go around the room and you tell me what did you?
Obliger.
Good old question.
Okay. Questioner. Upholder. All right. We'll see these other two, they're getting close there. That is the one benefit of doing it online. You don't have to tabulate. I am an upholder myself, and I am married to a questioner. I'm married to the quintessential questioner, as a matter of fact. He is about as questioner as questioners get. So just while we're waiting, I'll answer kind of the question here. Typically, people fall in one of the four categories, but there are some that are kind of neighbors. So, for example, if we go back here,
And it's on the bottom.
upholder and questioner both overlap in terms of they both meet inner expectations. Upholder and obligers overlap in that they both meet outer expectations. And as a matter of fact, I actually have a slide like this. So if you can be a questioner that tips towards upholder, you could be somebody who's like a questioner through and through, or a questioner that kind of tips towards rebel. So if there's kind of neighbors and you might tip one way or the other, similarly, an upholder can kind of tip to an obliger. But a questioner is never going to be an obliger. Like that is not a thing. And an upholder is never going to be a rebel. That is not a thing. But if your neighbors, if you see on here, you know, whoever your neighbors are, you can have a rebel who kind of tips to questioner. You get a good enough rationale, maybe they'll be a little bit easier with the compliance. And rebels said that this is less likely, but that could tip to obliger, where they're more likely to do something for somebody else, but less likely to do it, for themselves. And obligers, surprisingly, you see them. This is where the obliger rebellion comes in, where they're so sick of doing everything for everybody else that they just go into full-on rebellion. Yeah. So that's kind of the rule of proximity and the rule of opposition, where you cannot be crossways, but you might have some overlap with one of your neighboring tendencies. But something that is important to know is that obligers make up the majority of the population. So you're in good company. What does yours turn out to be? You're not sure?
No.
Okay, let's see.
And then I have all those. That are neutral,
Oh, all of these are mixed. Okay,
except for the one.
except for this one. And did you already put this here? Okay, so Upholder questioner. So let me ask you this in the scenario that we were talking about. If somebody asks you to do something and you question them about it, does their answer determine whether or not you would actually do what they want you to do? Then I would say that's more questioner. So I would say you're probably. And what about how do you feel about New Year's resolution?
I'm like happy with it.
Yeah.
I'm not against it. But it's not 100%, so I'm not 50%.
Okay. Yeah, so typically people who answer this way, like you did, because it's more of an arbitrary, like if I want to set a goal, I'll just set a goal. I don't need to wait for New Year's to do that. That is for sure more of a questioner. What did yours, were you able to tabulate your questioner? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so questioners are the second highest in the population. And then upholders, then rebels make up the smallest group. I would say if the rebels are pretty visible, when you see somebody who's a rebel, you kind of know. And then, those upholders, like this is the rarity. So we're in the same rare club. So what does that mean in terms of, so actually we had no rebels here, right? We had mostly.
Sure.
Yeah, what was yours? Pleasures. We got some questioners. We got one upholder. We don't have any rebels in this room, which is not surprising because again, that's the
They didn't even want to come. Basically. Rebels were like, I'm not coming to this.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're the least likely to want to sign up.
Right.
Yeah. So you have to sign up. They do not want to commit themselves to anything in the future.
They were invited, but they just.
Yeah. So if they wake up and feel like coming, then that choice has to be there for them, So, okay, so for the upholder, if you happen to be an upholder or an upholder, there are some things that are really helpful to know. So as an upholder myself, I can speak from my own personal experience. Sometimes people look at this and like, oh, I wish I was that tendency. That sounds so great. But just because I'm an upholder doesn't mean I am able to do all the things. For me, it's really important that even for my own personal things, that I actually set an intention to do something. Like if I have something I want to do and it's just kind of this thing floating out there and I don't actually name it or write it down on the to-do list or schedule it on my calendar, it won't get done. But the second it becomes real, I will do it. If it's on my to-do list, like I will not sleep until that thing is crossed off, and similarly, if I schedule it on my calendar, it's happening, period. As a kid, and if your parents, if you've ever had an upholder child, this might look like, well, you said we were going to do this. Or we are supposed, like, and then you didn't do it. And so now that's a problem for the upholder child.
Now you always do it.
Yeah. Or, maybe you have, as part of the bedtime routine, you have to do your reading. My teacher said I had to do 30 minutes of reading every night. Well, you were visiting your grandparents, and so you didn't get home until late that night. The upholder child is going to have a real problem deviating from that typical routine. And saying, oh, don't worry about it. Your teacher doesn't care for just one night. that's not going to work. That's not going to make them feel better, you know? And so that kind of rigidity can be sometimes difficult. So important for upholders to really set clear limits as well, because like obligers, they will say yes to a lot of different things. Now, different from obligers, upholders, because their own expectations are important to them, if somebody asks them to do something that's going to put them in danger of not doing something that they, you know, have already determined they want to do, they can say no. They're a lot better about saying no, but they do take on a lot of stuff. So it's really important that for upholders that you don't just default to yes, that you make sure that you're not just doing all the things, but also treating your own needs as tasks to do. So that means like if I want to be, I mean, the last 2 years, I've probably been the most intentional than ever about my own like physical fitness, because I just kind of determined one year, I'm going to set a routine. Every Tuesday I do upper body, every Thursday I do lower body, every Saturday I do a full body workout, and that's my routine, period. And now that I have the routine, I do it faithfully. And if for some reason I've had to learn, like I can't be rigid. If something comes up where I've got something going on a Tuesday night or Thursday night, I will, like, I look ahead at the week and I schedule when am I going to do it to make sure that I hold that for myself and it still gets done. So I learned not to be so rigid that I'm not going to like, oh no, I can't go to that event because I've got this commitment to me. Like, I'm not going to do that. But it is important that, you know, I know what it is. Another thing that's really helpful for upholders is making sure they understand what does finished look like, what does done look like, because they can be perfectionists. They'll just keep working on something until it's perfect. And sometimes perfect is not helpful. It's not healthy. It's not good. You know, and sometimes you have to know like what is good enough, like what is done where I can say, okay, I've gotten to a good place that I can leave this and move on to something else. And then using routines strategically, I've already talked about that. So those are important things to know for the upholder. For the questioner, if you happen to be a questioner, which there's several in this room, the fact of the matter is, I mean, you know, this works pretty well for a lot of parents saying like, because I said so. And some bosses even try to approach work like that as well. And just like, well, because I said so, they don't like to be questioned. Unfortunately, we don't always have a clear and good answer for why. Now, in a good organization with healthy supervisors, you'll have a good leader who will say, you know, here's what we're doing. Here's why it's important. You know, here's what I need you to do to contribute to that. That's great. But unfortunately, that's just not real life. We don't always get that. So what is important is for you to reframe sometimes to be able to say, okay, this is important. Even though I don't know why it's important for them to assign it to me, this is important for why I need to do it. So maybe it's because somebody else is counting on it. Maybe it's, you need to keep this job. So, you know, this is what they're expecting of me. I need to, like, my reframe is, the reason why is because I want to keep this job, and this is what it takes, is doing something, even though sometimes I don't understand why am I doing it this way, or why am I doing it at all. So really making sure that you kind of reframed and that you understand why for yourself. Another thing is setting decision deadlines to avoid that analysis paralysis. And you can get stuck. So I told you already that my husband is the quintessential questioner. Well, he'll start researching something. Like, we need something for our house, for example. He goes down like he has to know, like, what is the best thing, what has the best reviews, what's the most reliable, what's the most cost effective. He wants to do all of this research. And sometimes that works fine. But sometimes, like, enough is enough. We just have to make a decision, you know? And so giving it a deadline, like, okay, we need to make a decision by this date. You know, if it's for a household item, like, oh, we've got to get time for something to get ordered and be here. So let's make a decision by this date. Another thing that has been helpful for him is for some things, like right now we're looking to buy a house. And so we're working with a realtor. It's so helpful for him. He found a realtor that he trusts. And so he can just trust the expert. He knows all the stuff, so I don't have to go dig deep and learn everything there is to know about real estate. I have somebody I can trust and work with somebody you trust. So that's something that can really help somebody who's a questioner, kind of put your trust in somebody who is already an expert so that you don't have to feel the weight of that decision for yourself. They also really like data and benchmarks. If you want them to do something, know your stuff. You know that you're working with somebody who's a questioner, before you approach them with something, make sure you've thought through why. Why this? Why am I making this suggestion? What supports that? Again, this is a silly example, but it's just real life. If I ask my husband to take out trash, they're like, well, why don't you do it? That's fair. I'm just as capable of taking the trash out. But if I say to him, hey, honey, I'm in the middle of cooking dinner and the trash is full, can you take it out for me? He connects immediately, like, you're busy doing something. He wants me to keep doing that something because he's benefiting from that, and so he'll do it, no questions asked, because I've given him a reason why. I'm not just asking him to do something that I'm perfectly capable. Like, I'm literally standing right next to it. Like, why would I call him from, it gives him information, and now he can make that choice to do it because he has a rationale. Similarly, we'll sometimes, again, assign arbitrary deadlines. For people like obligers, that's really helpful to have a deadline, to know I'm working towards this date, to keep things on target, to have milestones that you're working for. For somebody who's a questioner, they don't like that, And so they're like, well, if it's not due until this date, then why do we have all these other little things? Like, it doesn't make sense to them. And so just understanding that as you're working with somebody who's a questioner, keep that in mind. It might be that they're not being like oppositional on purpose or intentionally. It just doesn't make sense to them. So help it make sense to them.
It almost sounds like and maybe me, I want to talk about me. I would say, oh, they're rebelling, but they're just questioning.
Yeah,
So you might think they're a rebel, but really they're just questioning the process.
Exactly. They just want to understand why.
Right.
As soon as they understand why, or we're doing something and it's not very efficient, like, why are we doing this that way? It's not because they're trying to be difficult. It's just, and we need that. Because how often do we just get stuck in ruts doing the same thing over and over again? Because this is just how we've always done it. We need somebody to question and be like, wait a second, does that still work for us? That worked for us when we were a team of 5. Now we're a team of 20. Like, I don't actually think the same process functions in the same way. We need people to question things so we don't get stuck in those patterns. Did you?
No, as a question, that is completely, I'm a why person.
Yeah.
It has to make sense.
Yeah.
I don't like to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly.
I like thinking outside the box. So I'd like to know exactly, okay, if you ask me to do something, what's the reason behind it? I don't have to be, and I'm not going to ask you 1,000 questions. But you were going down there, and my family would attest to that. The fact that, okay, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Why are we spending this money?
Yep.
Why do we have to do this one? Can't we not do this way and so forth? Let me get all the information. If I'm going to spend X amount of money, and let me find the best. That's just, I'm a why person.
Yeah.
Definitely. So yeah, I can
Definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, interestingly enough, because questioners like to think things through and like to do their research, they don't want to be questioned themselves. So if you're like, some people, like, if you start questioning, they feel like, wait a second, but I've already vetted this.
Yeah.
Like, I've done all the work. I know that these are our best options. So they can sometimes get slightly annoyed if people start to question them. And again, just know it's not because they're trying to be difficult. It's because, like, they've done their due diligence. They've already thought thoroughly about this. Do you have something?
No.
Okay.
You can question me. It's fine.
Yeah.
But sometimes I say, look at my rest of my life.
It can also be really helpful for them if you've got a lot of decisions, to reduce some of that decision fatigue. See if you can batch things together so that you're not having to evaluate every piece of something. That can be helpful. But really, the biggest thing is help them understand the why. And if it's you and you feel like you're not getting a clear why, but it's clear that you need to do the thing anyway, find your own why. Like, what is important? Like, maybe, if you're being asked to help on a project and you don't really understand why the project exists to begin with, think about what's the outcome going to be, and is that something that aligns with, my own values or what I think is important, and then it helps you come up with your own why. So for the obliger, the risk for the obliger is burning out, getting resentful because, they're always saying yes to other people, and they can end up neglecting their own personal goals. So what works for them, the biggest number one thing for our obligers here is the external accountability. That is the most important thing. Build in external accountability wherever possible. If you want to read more, join a book group. If you want to be faithful at working out, get an exercise buddy, join a class. Like, different things work well for different obligers. If it's at work, sometimes supervisors might feel like you can ask them, like, hey, what's the deadline for this? And they'll say, oh, just whenever you can get to it. Thinking, oh, I'm taking the pressure off. This is going to be so much better for the person. That's not true. If that person is an obliger, they need that deadline. They need to, and especially if it's possible, to break it up into those more like milestones. I was just talking to a friend the other day, and she's a professor. And so she works with graduate students who are working on their PhDs. And writing a dissertation is a really long process. And so, having just this one big thing way out there isn't really helpful, especially for an obliger. So she was talking about a student who she was like, listen, I cannot get myself to write. And so they worked together on a timeline. And now every single Friday, she turns in a draft of something. Maybe it's a draft of a section or whatever. Maybe it's edits of a prior draft. But every Friday she's turning in something. So she has that accountability. And so that keeps her on target. And she's so excited because she's like, I've never been on track for something like this. I'm usually waiting to the last minute, and you just can't do that with a major thing like a dissertation. So that external accountability is really important. Also having structured commitments, so not just deadlines, but check-ins or meetings. Those can be kind of markers, especially if at a meeting you can get really clear at the end of the meeting about, okay, who is doing what and by when. Like, by the next time we meet, Gail, I need you to have X done. Now Gail knows, and she has a deadline, and she's got a whole team of people who are going to be in that meeting, are going to hold her accountable. And so now she has the accountability to get it. If you don't do things like that, then it just becomes up to you. For the obliger, that becomes really difficult. Other things will, take precedent, and the next thing you know, it's not getting done. And so as much as possible, attaching those goals to somebody else. Now, something that can work sometimes for obligers is not just like deadlines, but also, think about in parenting. I want to raise children who realize that their own needs matter, not just the needs of others. And so I need to model what it looks like to take care of myself and get enough sleep and make sure that I'm doing, and so sometimes having that accountability to another human, like what I do matters to this other human, can really help them. So it depends on the person and what level of accountability you need, but external accountability is the biggest thing. So the other thing is, practice saying no. Remember, as an obliger, when you say yes to somebody, you have to ultimately say no to something else. Whether it's, no to your time, no to another person. So what are you saying? What do you, be intentional. What am I saying yes to? If I say yes to this, what do I have to say no to as a result? And so let that help you prioritize to say no. And don't let people, people will have a tendency to try to take obligers for granted because they can always count on them to say yes. And that's what leads to obliger rebellion. I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about the 4 tendencies, and this woman was sharing her story about how she was really involved in her church and was doing all these different programs. in charge of leading them. And every year they were asking her to do stuff, and she kept taking on more and more and more responsibility. And she said to her husband, we've got to move, and we've got to move by this date, because if like all these things are coming up, and if I don't say I'm moving, like I'm going to be on the hook for them. And she literally moved to another city to avoid doing this. Like that's really serious.
I changed churches. I'll
Did
be
you?
honest.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, you can just step down. It's okay. I'm going to another church.
No, that is the classic Elijah rebellion. You get to the point where your resentment builds so much that you're like,
And I didn't.
I said yes and yes and yes and yes and yes, and now
I'm done.
no, I'm done. I'm done. I have a friend, she was working at a job, and a similar thing happened, and she just quit. She was like, I can't anymore. I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I just said yes and yes and yes, and I've been pushed so far, and she just quit. So obviously it's better if you can recognize that you start to feel the resentment build. What do you need to do? I heard another example of somebody who, with her family, occasionally will say, I've got to go on strike, to avoid having to really need to go on strike. But like, I need a week where like you guys are going to have to figure out your own meals, you know, you're going to have to figure out your own laundry. Like, I'm just taking the week off, and just to protect themselves if they feel like they're getting to that point of where they're close to burning out, because it's not good for anybody. Again, if the obliger gets to that point where they tip into that obliger. So make sure that you're protecting your own time, practice saying no, but implement that external accountability as much as
Why do you think that one's the biggest one? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I don't know why it's the biggest one. I think, I mean, you know, with any personality, there are, you know, all different types. So again, this is just one facet. But I think sometimes, you know, as people, we value other people. We care about what other people think. And so it's a lot easier to follow through to please others than to necessarily worry about ourselves. So.
My son would say it's a need to fit in, a need, you know, it feels the need to be wanted and needed. And
Yeah, it feels good to be able to be there for people, to be dependable. I think as a society, we really value that. But and I mean, if you think about school really favors obligers and questioners, or I'm sorry, obligers and upholders. It does not favor questioners. If you start questioning a teacher, they're like,
that's so true.
sit down and be quiet, you know? Yeah, it just doesn't. And so just societally, the rebel and the questioner tend to get more of a bad rap. So, well, we don't have any rebels here, but I think it's important that they do exist out there in the world. So, really, the risk for them is, you know, they can end up getting themselves in real trouble because at work, especially because they butt against, you know, tradition. So some of the things that really are helpful for them, because they care about choice and freedom and identity. Really reframing things to I choose to rather than I have to. And so if you are, and since none of you in here are rebels, I will just say the strategy that works best for a rebel is information, consequences, choice. Give them the information, you know, if it was a rebel child, I might say, hey, it's a really sunny day out today. That's information. Consequences, if you go outside in the sun for a long amount of time, you might get sunburned. Sunburns are really painful. That's a consequence. And then choice. Before you go outside, would you like to put on some sunscreen, or would you like to wear, you know, a hat and a long sleeve shirt? Choice. They can choose, and, you know, they have the, you know, but you have to be willing to leave it in their hands and let them suffer the consequences. So if they decide to go out without anything, and they get sunburned, and that's tough for parents. Now, if it's in a work setting, you have a little bit more wiggle room, but really the thing is that you need to appeal to their sense of identity. Like, hey, I know you really like helping people out. We need somebody to run the point on this particular thing. can you help? Again, they are free to say yes or no. It has to be a true choice. But giving them the information, appealing to their identity, is really helpful because then they're choosing it, because rebels can do anything they choose to do. So that's the important thing to remember that. Yeah.
I think the key word you use is a true choice.
Yes.
Don't BS.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yep.
I'm really gonna rebel. So
Exactly.
true choice. Yeah.
Exactly. Another thing is, some people like obligers, it's really helpful to give them a reminder. Hey, just a reminder that report's due on Friday. That's helpful for obliger. For a rebel, that is not helpful. Suddenly there's an expectation and they're like, nope, I'm not doing it. So you got to be careful about triggering their rebellion. You cannot nag them. Tell them, give them the information, and then you leave them alone. And leave them alone. Exactly. They also really respond well to challenge. Like, if you kind of, and it's a little bit of a weird thing, but like, having the expectation that somebody can't do it, like, I think you're too busy right now to get this done, might trigger that rebellion. Oh yes, I can. I'll vouch for you. I can do it. Or this project might be too big for you to handle on your own. We might need to get you some team members on board. Nope, I can do it.
Yeah.
Nobody's
ever done this before, so
yeah.
I don't know if it can be done. Oh, it's gonna get done.
Yeah, exactly. They really like that sense of challenge. Another thing that's helpful to know working with somebody who seems to be a rebel is that they really value freedom. They really value choice. So it's important just, if they want to do something, they were going to do it in their own time, in their own way. So if they're doing something, even if the timing may not be perfect, they're doing it early. They're doing it, maybe differently than how you would do it. Let them do it. Just let them. If you say, we're going to have a little bit more information tomorrow, maybe we can start then. But they've already started today. Just let them start today. As much as possible. It's not going to be truly detrimental. Sometimes I'll speak for myself as an upholder. I have a certain idea of how something should be done, and in the timing that it should be done. And when you're dealing with a rebel, it's best to just let them. Okay. So another thing that's important to think about is, as we communicate with people, what are some things that they need? So for upholders, give them notice as much as possible, because they've got their routine, they've got an idea of how their day or week is going to go. Don't try to throw something at them last minute. Try to give them some notice. Also, make sure that you're clearly articulating the priorities. They really are going to appreciate that, and avoid changing plans last minute. For the questioner, make sure you have a thorough justification. Remember, they need that why. Explain the why and show them how this is going to be better and more efficient. We had a service at my church on Good Friday, and I sang, so I'm part of the praise team, and we were doing a practice the night before Good Friday, and the leader, she was saying that she wanted to do something. And she had this plan set, how she wanted to do it. She's a questioner. And I pointed out, or at first I said, I think we should do this. And she was very resistant. And then I explained why. Here's why. We had one song that was all everybody. And then the next song, we were only using half of the people. And so we knew we were going to have to do that song again, rather than go through and go to the next song. Let's just redo it now. Well, we've got everybody here and in place. As soon as she heard the rationale, her questioner mind was like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, let's do it that way. They just need to understand why, understand the efficiency, and don't set arbitrary rules and deadlines for that. It doesn't matter to them. It doesn't make any sense. If there is a deadline, it needs to be a true deadline, and they need to understand why it's important. For the obliger, manufacture external accountability. If there's not accountability that exists already, make it up. Figure out a way that's going to help for them. Give them some guidelines. Helpful for them to have guidelines. Give them ways that they can monitor their progress along the way, and make sure that you're not taking advantage. Just treat them fairly, and that'll help keep them from building resentment. And then finally for the rebel, as I mentioned, that information, consequences, choice. Now, if you don't know what someone's tendency is, information, consequences, choice works for pretty much every tendency. It appeals to the upholder because they want to avoid those consequences. The obliger also wants to avoid those consequences. The questioner, they want to know why. Give them the information, help them understand. The information plus consequences is really helpful for the questioner. And choice is actually really good for the obliger and the upholder as well, because it so often the obliger, and even to some extent the upholder, is looking at what's going to please you. It helps reinforce that what you want matters. And that's helpful as well, to give people that sense also. So information, consequences, choice, really important for the rebel, but also pretty helpful for all of them. And again, let them decide, stick to it as much as possible. Don't nag them, let it be a true choice, and challenge their identity or ability if needed to kind of spur them into that rebel mode when it's helpful, but try not to trigger the rebel mode when it's not. So ultimately, as I mentioned, all of these tendencies have good sides and bad sides. They all have value. They all can contribute. There's not one that's good and one that's bad. The important thing is, let's not fight against our own tendency. Let's make sure that we are working in ways that are going to help us to be successful moving forward, and make whatever adjustments. So now what I'd love to do, now that you kind of all know your tendency, were you able to figure out yours?
No,
Not yet. Okay. That's
I
okay.
think I'm a combination.
Well, that's one of the things we were talking about before. Typically you are one, but you might tip a little to one or the other neighboring one, but mostly. So how do you feel about New Year's resolutions?
I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, I will do something for me, and I will make a commitment to it if it makes sense to me.
That sounds like a questioner. It sounds like a questioner. Honestly, that question I would say is probably the quickest way to determine, and you're not looking for a specific answer, it's more of how they approach it. If I don't do that because I can never stick with, a resolution, probably they're an obliger. If, well, it's such an arbitrary date, if it makes sense to me, I'm gonna do it. I don't need to have set an intention on a specific date. If it's an upholder, they usually kind of like them. They're like, yeah, any reason to have a thing to, take a fresh start. And rebels are, yeah, no way. Again, you can't make me, and neither can I. So what I'd love for each of you to do, and you can think about it, you can write it down if you want, but think of one thing, now that you know your tendency, what's one thing that you can do, whether it's for internal or external expectations, moving forward, that would help you be more successful? What's one thing that you can do to help you be more successful? And we'll just kind of go around the room. I'll give you a few minutes to think about it. But now that you know your tendency, what's one thing you can do to help with that? And if there's any slide you want to go back to, let me know, and I'm happy to. Has the questioner? This one or the other one?
The one there.
This one?
No, the other one.
The other one? Okay. There it is.
That's what I was thinking, is I just have to identify what my why is. As long as I have my why, I'm good. I can't stand it if my time is wasted, or priority shift, but you didn't tell me priority shifted. You had me put all of this energy and work into something, and then you don't move forward with it.
I guess we said it a little table.
Yeah.
I do like what you said about setting goals for ourselves, because as obligators, if you tell me when it's due, I'm on it. I'm
Yeah.
there. But it's hard for me. I was supposed to be signed up for Sunburst. That's not gonna happen. Accountability. Yeah, accountability for myself.
Yeah.
Like every day is a cheat day for me. Like it's just, I'm good at that. Like I could talk myself out of what I needed.
Yeah.
So, but I liked how you said, you set a goal for yourself, like I'm gonna do this. And, I put it on my calendar, make sure I do.
Yeah. And that, but again, the external kind of one thing to note about that is if you have a partner, sometimes they don't work as our external accountability because they're almost like an extension of ourselves.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
like, they're all, as you can bypass them just as you bypass yourself, but somebody else can be, really helpful. Like, I really want to start walking every day. Like, maybe having a pet who's relying on you, like a dog, like that dog's gonna make you walk every day, or a friend, like is there a friend I can call to say, hey, let's, my mom is an obliger, and she set up with a lady who lives in a neighboring neighborhood. They meet up once a week. They have like a date, and it holds her accountable. And she wanted to go and walk, and so now she's got like somebody who is relying on her. So when she wakes up in the morning and doesn't feel like doing it, that she's got that other person depending. And for some people, having like the accountability of a class where you pay money, that might be enough. For other people, I don't care. I'll waste that money every day. I don't know any of those people in that class. That doesn't bother me. But if I know somebody in the class or I know the instructor, then, that.
I know they're waiting on me.
Yeah. So let's go around. I'd love to hear what's one thing, now that you know your tendency, that you could do differently.
I would say the structured check-ins. I really like that in the standing meetings because I have like the to-do list and I love to see when I cross it out. But it's so big that sometimes I'm like, why did I make my to-do list 2 pages?
Yeah.
So it almost like makes me feel like going to the paralysis? Paralysis analysis, like, because it's so big, like I get discouraged.
Yeah, there's too many things. One of the things that I do that helps me with that is I'll do like a brain dump. Like, here's all the things in my head I know that need to be done. But then I take that list and I say, okay, by when do these things need to be done? And then I kind of prioritize them. And then I'll actually like schedule time. Like, okay, these are all next week things. These are this week things. These are today things. So now I have my list of like, what is just today? And then for the things that are coming later in the week, I will go through and actually put time on my calendar to address them. Like, I need to prepare to address a success workshop. I've got to have my slides done by this day, like little things like that. So I'll just put those things on my calendar, and I do what my calendar says. Yeah. That's an accountability. To-do list can be super overwhelming. So break it down. You can have multiple ones. What are the things? And I also break mine down. I have my to-do list for work. I have one for my church work. I have one for my personal life, like my home life. And so that also helps. So once I'm off the clock, what are some things I want to do tonight so that I can approach my night with intentionality and not just. So.
That accountability partner.
Yeah.
I'll do it for somebody else.
Yeah.
Quicker than I'll do it for myself.
Yeah. And it's helpful sometimes for people who aren't obligers. They might not understand the need for external accountability. So if you go to somebody and you're like, wow, they don't really understand, it's like, tell them, like, this is what I need. This will help me be successful. So I know it's, you are not saying that like you need this from me, but I need this for me because I want to do a job and I know this will help me.
Yeah, I've actually said those exact words. Like, we were like, well, when is this due? Oh, whenever. No, you need to tell me.
Yeah.
If you don't tell me, it will be, next year. Maybe, until you tell me again. And then I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh, right. Yep. Yep. For sure. What about you?
Well, first of all, I'm totally retired
Okay.
and worked for the city for almost 40 years, and I've been retired for almost 20 years. So
congratulations.
Yeah. And we're snowbirds, just got back from Florida on Friday. So, but for me, it is keeping it on my calendar, everything. And well, also as a result of all of that, I have CRS. Do you know what that is?
Now, what's CRS?
Can't remember shit.
Oh,
I'm gonna use that.
When you don't have an office, you don't have an IT department backing you up, you don't have 12 meetings every day, blah, 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 blah. It's just, it's different to remember things. But so I put everything on my calendar. But the other thing is that I do make an effort to stay in touch with friends and coworkers and stuff like that. So,
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Sherry, what about you?
Yeah, mine is definitely, I have to define my why because I don't care what a due date is. If it doesn't make sense to me that that's the due date, I'll just arbitrarily move it.
Yeah.
Why do we have to have this done by this time? Oh, I need that done by this time and I'll just move it.
Yeah.
So I kind of was debating, like, do I fit in that Rubin category? Like, but then the more we did the deep dive into it, it was definitely defining my why.
Mm-hmm. And you know, things that are like out there in the future in particular can be really difficult. And then the next thing you know, it snuck up on you because like, oh, I don't really need it done this week. So that's why it's helpful even for questioners to break things down into smaller pieces. It is very rare that a single task is one thing. Usually it's multiple things. Projects are multiple things. So even, I mean, if you think about even scheduling an appointment, say with like a doctor or something. Well, maybe you have an established doctor, maybe you don't. If you don't, there's a step of like, I gotta find somebody who's in network with my insurance. If you've got, if you do have somebody, you still have to find the phone number. You know, I schedule time to make the call. I got to check my calendar. There's actually multiple tasks associated with it. So figuring out what are all the tasks and by when, like when do I need this to be done to do? What about you, Elliot?
I have to get a balance of information, I collect information to make an informed decision.
Yeah.
And it all, as you said, it all runs at the same time. So the same thing at home. Right now, it's springtime. I'm looking at the house and all the things that I'm trying to get done. I'm trying to collect information. I get husband and make sure I get everyone, all I want to make sure all the possible vendors for each. I want to see which is the best ones.
Yeah.
So I'm collecting information at church. It's the same thing as at 7 I'm a music leader director as well. So that's a lot when you get that analogy. And in so many things, I am at the same time collecting information for the church to make sure it's running well. And doing our part to make sure it's running right. And work out the business service representative for a region for the youth. And I constantly meet with for the 5 counties going on and touch base with someone and collecting information and evaluating and seeing what is so. I have to be able to put a cap on how much information I can because it can become real fatigue will take place.
Yeah.
Because there's so much information coming in. I have no problem making a decision, but I want to make sure I'm making an informed decision.
Right.
And it becomes real fatigue trying to make sure I can do it.
How much is enough?
How much is
I've
enough?
got enough. Let's go. Yeah, for sure. What about you, Jackie?
I was thinking like I'm more the neighbor, like I'm between the rebel and the questioner.
Okay.
But I've started like ignoring the rebel because it gets you in trouble. I started like really, I think the questioner's taken over, and I think maybe sometimes I'm a little too questioner to the point that I'm offending people. So I think I really need to start checking that. Like, why am I really doing this? Because at the end of the day, it's a job and you're gonna have to do it either way. Yeah, whether you're questioning or not.
Well, and if you have that kind of rebelness in you, really reframing it from like I have to like I want to, or I get to, I choose to. I want this job. I want to be in this place. Like this works for my life. And so as a result, I choose to do those things. And that can kind of help turn off some of that resistance that you might feel when you can frame it in that way. Like, I know, like, I want to be a person who is helpful, who is contributing, and that's what this looks like. So I'm going to choose to do these things. And again, it's as much as you can own those choices for yourself, the easier that will be for you and the less of that resistance will kick up.
Right. It's like, well, that's a really stupid role. And what does it solve?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it solves me keeping my job.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, what about you?
Kind of a little bit what Ellen was saying, as far as the information and, just constantly just looking at it, but, just needed to make a decision. So kind of like delaying the action,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start to think, am I procrastinating? But, I just really want to like make sure that the outcome is gonna be what I need it to be. So now I'm back at the why. But,
Yeah.
so, yeah, I just, just trying to like, I guess make a balance of it.
Yeah.
And, also keeping an open mind and, the information that other people have presented to me. And so not just thinking that my way is the right way.
Right. Yeah. That's important for a questioner sometimes to like realize that okay, other people do have other information and good rationale as well. I'm not the only one. Sometimes we've got to let go of the reins a little bit and let other people, speak into a situation or speak clearly. What about you?
I'm just saying yes.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at that.
Yeah.
I feel like I can take on more than I can bear.
Yeah.
I tend to put a lot of people before me and their things they want. I'm trying to work on that.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, no, that's really important, really helpful because upholders really hold themselves to a high standard. And so it's not just that they want to help other people, but they want to do everything, great, and they don't want to let anybody down. And you can put so much internal pressure on yourself that you end up feeling the weight of that. So yeah, that's really smart. Very good. Well, it looks like our lunch is here. I'll be around, so you can for sure ask questions if you have them. Sherry, how do you want to? Are you passing things out? Do you want people to come
Well,
up?
I can. I'm still trying to figure out the order. So we have one set that has names on it.
Okay.
And one set that doesn't.
Oh.
So it might be you two that maybe we don't have names on. We'll let you get it figured out.
Could you please say that again?
Wow. These packages, I got to take those, yeah. So I have, this is for me, maybe, there's. Oh, somebody else. How about you?